We recognize that the Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society gathers on the land of the Western Abenaki people. We respect their spiritual relationship to the land. We hope to learn from them how we can live together in peace and justice.
I wish I knew how it would feel to be free. I wish I could break all these chains holding me. I wish I could say, Lord, all the things that I could say. Say 'em loud and say 'em clear for the whole round world to hear. I wish I could share all the love that I'm in my heart. Remove all the bars that still keep us apart. I wish you could know what it means to be me. Then you see and agree, everyone just ought to be free. I wish I could give all I'm longing to give. I wish I could live like I'm longing to live. I wish I could do all the things that I can do, though I'm way overdue. I'd be starting anew. I wish I could be, Lord, like a bird in the sky. How sweet it would be if I found I could fly. I'd fly to the sky and the sun and look down at the sea. Then I sing 'cause I know how it feels to be free. Then I sing 'cause I know how it feels to be free.
Wow. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That voice never gets old. Thank you. Good morning and welcome to CVUUS, Champlain Valley Unitarian Universalist Society Sunday morning online service. My name is Esther Thomas. I am a member of this congregation, and I will be serving as worship associate for our minister, the Reverend Barnaby Feeder, who will be leading today's service. If this is your first time with us, please email us so we can share about our society. If you have a milestone or passage, please put it in the chat box if you haven't already sent it to us. After the service, we invite you to stay for our virtual coffee hour, where we will have our congregational conversation on adult religious exploration led by Doug Richards. Oh, well, I can call you Douglas too. I see your name on the screen. Love it. Yay. If you're on Zoom, stay where you are. And if you're on YouTube, watch for instructions to join the Zoom. The best way to stay connected with all the many activities going on at CVUUS during these social distant times is to read the weekly email blast. Thank you, Laura. We appreciate you. See our website and the January newsletter for several small group ministries, and of course, for the 2 new adult RE options. Today's call to worship is a piece from Dr. Martin Luther King's letter from a Birmingham jail. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider, anywhere within its bounds. Now it is time to light our chalice, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. You should see the video of the chalice being lit. I ask that you join me in reading the words as they appear on your screen.
Marky, you probably know you have the wrong share.
I don't actually, so now I think I'll do the right share.
May our fumbling tongues be blessed so that our chatter becomes prayer and prayer becomes concerted action. May our restless minds be blessed so that insight becomes will and will becomes effective action. May our anxious hearts be blessed so that longing becomes love and love guides our every action.
Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to seek what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another, and may we walk in peace. Let us open our eyes to see what is beautiful. Let us open our minds to seek what is true. Let us open our hearts to love one another, and may we walk in peace.
Good morning, everybody. My time for all ages today is a book called I Am One, a Book of Action by Susan Verdi, and the art is by Peter H. Reynolds.
It seems like a tall.
How do I make a difference? Seems like a tall order for one so small.
but beautiful things start with just one. One seed to start a garden. One stroke to start a masterpiece. One note to start a melody. One step to start a journey. One brick to start breaking down walls. And I can speak one gentle word to start a conversation. I can use my one soft voice to start a friendship. I can perform one act of kindness to start a connection. I can share one tender hug to start caring. I can light one candle to start leading the way. I can make one drop in the water to start ripples that become swells, then waves, traveling over oceans, across borders and boundaries, landing on distant shores, to start a chain reaction, inspire a movement, make a change. I am one, and I can take action. We are each one, and we can take action. One by one, we can make a difference. Because one is all it takes to start something beautiful. And if you look in this picture, you can see that the wall that they took apart, they made this long path going through the garden, and they also took some of those bricks to make the peace sign that's in the middle. It's really easy to look around and see all the stuff that's happening in the world as a kid or as a grown-up and think the stuff that needs to be changed is so big that one person can't make a difference, that especially if we're young, we can feel like we can't do anything that's really going to matter that much. And it's just not true. One person is what has started all kinds of things in the world, right? Movements start with one person. Protests that you've been in, protests for peace that have met on the bridge in Middlebury or other places that are fighting for freedom and equity and inclusion, including everybody, rights for everybody, for the planet, have begun with one person who thought, I want to speak out. I want to do something to change it. They had one idea, they talked with another person, and that's how it starts, right? It's like dropping the stone in the water, one tiny little pebble that goes and the ripple goes and goes and goes and goes. And sometimes we don't even know how powerful what we can do as one person until later. And that really makes me think of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was one person, right? He was one person who used his voice and his heart and his connection with people to speak out and keep speaking out and keep speaking out and keep fighting. He was willing to be jailed for it. And he did it through nonviolence. And I just really want to leave us with that thought. In the book, there was a moment, I don't remember the words exactly, but it says something like, one person can take down a wall or one person can break down a wall. And that moment gave me pause as I was looking at the book and thinking about things that have been broken lately, especially in the news. that have been really upsetting for some of us to see. And I think it's really important that we remember that the way to peace is through non-violence. It doesn't mean we never try to take down a wall, but the reason that we're doing it really matters. That we are working for freedom, for rights for everybody, for a more open and just and peaceful and loving world. Those are the reasons to be trying to take walls apart. And I just want to leave you with a quote that Dr. Martin Luther King said. He said a lot of things about nonviolence. And nonviolence doesn't mean you're not angry. It doesn't mean you're not forceful. It doesn't mean you don't break rules. But it means you do it in a peaceful way that is trying to not harm people physically, right? And emotionally. So he said, I just want to find the right one because there's many, many that I was looking at. Just give me a moment to find the one. He said, in spite of temporary victories, so temporary means it doesn't last long, right? Violence never brings permanent peace. So you might briefly win with violence, but if you want peace, and by peace, I mean the kind of peace that comes when things are as they should be, peace in our hearts because we're living in a loving, fair way for everybody. We want to do it. We want to do it through love. So that is what I leave you with this week. And I especially leave you with this thought to notice this week, what are things that you think should be different? That's pretty easy to see. And just think of one step you could take, even if it's small. What is one small step you could take? Because we all can do that. We're all activists. One small step you can take to help make things better. So, I miss you all. I love you.
Thank you so much, Poppy, for that beautiful time for all ages. And I think it will slide very nicely into what I have to say in the rest of the service. At this point, though, we have our offering when we share whatever wealth we're fortunate enough to have with some organization that's working in the wider world to do the kinds of things that we also value as Unitarian Universalists. And this month, we have been sharing our offering with 350.org, the environmental organization that got its birth right here in Middlebury. Now, you may have heard or read somewhere in the past week that 2020 was either the warmest year or the second warmest year in history, depending on which survey you're looking at. And yet, if you have a child who's been born recently, it may turn out to be one of the coldest years of their life because of global warming. And everything that 350.org does in one way or another is helping us work on the issues that are leading to climate change. So I invite you to be as generous as you can be in this offering. Now there's always unspoken joys and concerns and milestones. We leave a time for meditation or prayer in our service for you to be in touch with what's on your heart. I want to lead you into this 2 minutes of silence with a prayer called The Black Cat, written many years ago by Reverend Kenneth Collier. And it's an invitation for you to understand what's really in your heart that's creative. So, The Black Cat. We try to find a silent black cat in an empty, dark room. We blindfold ourselves. Maybe blindness will help us see in the dark. We grope madly this way and that, and finally declare with conviction, there is no cat. Then we sit, still and silent, and the black cat crawls into our lap and purrs. I now invite you into silent prayer and meditation.
I got a brother living out nowhere, doing what he likes to do. People making rules, but my brother, he don't care. He's a rebel through and through. The man wants nothing but freedom. Nothing but freedom. My other brother wanna change the world, and naturally he's always right. Marching around with his mouth unfurled, itching for a straight up fight. He says it's all about justice. All about justice. Well, let me tell you what, nothing but freedom means nothing but freedom. All about justice makes it all about justice. Freedom only wants to have its own way, and justice says you've got to do what I say. And neither brother's bound to budge, and so they duke it out every blessed day. That's how they threw away freedom and justice. And justice and freedom, both stubborn as a mischief, vinegar and piss, not listening to anything of foolish pride. Them fellas are mistaken if they think across a lake by paddling the boat to just one side. And nothing but freedom leads to nothing but freedom. And all about justice makes it all about justice. Freedom says it's all about me and mine, and justice never cares to even ask why. They can stand there touching noses for a week, they'll never see eye to eye. That's how they crucify freedom and justice. Justice and freedom. Freedom and justice. Justice and freedom. I got a brother living out nowhere, doing what he likes to do. I'm just like that man, and I swear I'm just like his brother too.
Freedom and justice. Ooh, I felt it. Thank you. That was beautiful. And now, our reading today is from the Facebook page of Janata Petrus Nassa, a Minneapolis-based African-American poet who practices a theology of embodied joy. It was one of the countless commentaries on the truth that how events unfolded spotlighted continuing systematic racism in American policing and crowd control, this time to the detriment of democracy itself. I truly love Black people. And when I see us struggling or going through it, I pray and love on us and think of how I can contribute to the healing of my people. Acknowledging our collective trauma and pain, that it can come out in ways that are beautiful and magical, or in ways that are destructive and toxic. I try to see myself and trauma as linked with theirs, even if they are going through what they're going through might be incomprehensible to me. One thing I encourage white people to do in this moment is to not attempt to distance themselves from those white people and their ugly and destructive ways. That is not real or fair or helpful to BIPOC folks. What you can do instead is acknowledge that those people are your uncles, aunties, cousins, nephews, nieces, and nibblings, and getting into the trenches of healing with them instead of denying them. Take ownership of them and y'all's collective responsibility in this moment to heal and change on behalf of your ancestors. I would like people who are white folks working in communities of color to examine the way they will attempt to save communities of color and neglect their own communities' brokenness and the collective wounds of whiteness. That shit yesterday at the Capitol was a cry for help. BIPOC folks, I hope we are acknowledging our beauty and magic today and taking care of ourselves. Because that shit was bananas yesterday and hella racist.
Thank you, Esther, for that reading. The original title of this worship service was First Things First, and I had intended to talk a little more directly about the links between what's going on today in the area of racism with Martin Luther King Jr. Through talking a lot about the lives of his successors in leadership within the African American community. Then events at the Capitol intervened, and I felt a necessity to look forward from Dr. King's celebration of Dr. King's birthday tomorrow to the inauguration of a new government later this week. And so I'm going to share with you, as presumptuous as it may be, what I hope Joe Biden would say in his inaugural address on Thursday. And at the end, we're going to have a little time for you to say what I left out or what you think I got wrong. My fellow Americans, ever since George Washington spoke before Congress in 1789 on the occasion of his inauguration as our first president, it has been our cherished custom for each newly minted leader of the Republic to reflect on the predicament in which they find themselves. Whether briefly or at great length, whether inside or out, in good weather or bad, whether in times of peace or times of war, whether in prosperity or widespread distress, the newly elected president has a need to acknowledge that you and they themselves hope for more than any one person can deliver. All new presidents have called on God to help them in one way or another. Thomas Jefferson, for instance, spoke in 1805 following his re-election by the only people who could legally vote, white men, of relying on, quote, the being in whose hands we are, who led our forefathers as Israel of old from their native land. I mention President Jefferson specifically because this author of the noble words of our Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal in the eyes of God and endowed with the rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, spoke to a nation he clearly believed was okay with white male supremacy, including the practice of slavery and dehumanization of Native Americans. This is a part of who we are. This is a part of who we were. It remains a part of who we are. As one comment I saw about the recent violent and deadly mob assault on the Capitol succinctly put it, until you understand white supremacy, everything else you see will confuse you. There is much to be admired and be proud of in our history, and I'm second to none in being proud of it. But until we are honest about all of it, the present will confuse us, and has become starkly apparent in recent years. The social media environment in which we live today will amplify any confusion to dangerous levels for us as individuals and the viability of democratic institutions on which we rely so heavily for safety, prosperity, and the pursuit of happiness. In addition to calling on God, all my predecessors have called in different ways on the wisdom, energy, and patriotism of everyday Americans to sustain them. And all have understood that they also need the shared commitment of the various branches of government to uphold and defend the Constitution. I think it's fair to say I and all of my predecessors, except perhaps General Washington, have entered office with an added burden they have freely taken upon themselves. They have promised more while campaigning for office than any human could deliver on their own. This is the nature of campaigns. We speak not just of what we intend to do, but often in terms that can only be plausible if we had a degree of control over the nation's affairs that, thank God, will never be ours. One thing you learn from this as citizens is how far those to whom you will give power will go if unchecked. I presume I stand here today because a large majority of you happily concluded, correctly, I assure you, that I believe in shared power. I believe deeply in the elements of the Constitution that say the president is called on to lead this country as its chief executive and commander-in-chief of its military, not rule over it as an unchecked king or queen. Let me speak plainly. My predecessor had a different view as long as power was in his hands. He pursued it to the point of lying extravagantly, repeatedly, and some would say seditiously about the fairness of this election in which the nation decisively deposed him. His insistence on continuing to lie to himself and others about this and other matters on a scale never before seen in an American president is why he is not here today. Why so many people believed him and continue to do so is a challenge. It is a mystery we must address together if this nation is to hold together, move forward, and regain the regard in which it has been held for many years by so many other countries. I have some strongly held views on what our country needs to do to address the crises we face, starting first and foremost with our response to the COVID pandemic in the near term and to climate change in the long term. My views differ from my predecessors in being more detailed and science-based, but I know I do not know everything. I will never presume that I am the smartest person in the room or tell you I am the only person who can serve your interests in this office effectively. I will never tell you that Congress can't improve on my proposals. I have never and will not begin to seek enactment of my policies with the belief that which side you are on any issue is who you are. To me, each of you is a person of inherent worth and dignity. As I see it, my job description calls on me to respect, care about, and suffer with all people residing in this great country, including undocumented immigrants when they encounter misfortune or oppression. My religious beliefs and humanity call on me to extend that same regard to every human being. I have never and will not now say that your views on any issue brand you as my friend to be rewarded by my administration or my enemy to be punished. Aid to your state in times of disaster will not be held up until your governor praises me. We may disagree. We may disagree so deeply that remaining nonviolent and civil with each other is hard. This government will operate in accordance with laws that will restrict some personal freedoms for the common good, as is so obviously necessary to tame the COVID virus. But I will never allow such disagreements to lead me into not regarding you as fellow Americans or thinking of you as less than human because we disagree. 12 years ago, in very different circumstances, the largest inaugural crowd in American history gathered here to embrace my dear friend, Barack Obama, as our 44th president. I had the honor of being inaugurated as vice president and listening as the poet Elizabeth Alexander offered this poem, Praise Song for the Day. The amens in my heart and mind flowed freely as she said towards the end of the poem, I know there's something better down the road. We need to find a place where we are safe. We walk into that which we cannot yet see. Some live by love thy neighbor as thyself, others by first do no harm or take no more than you need. What if the mightiest word is love? Love beyond marital, filial, national. Love that casts a widening pool of light. Love with no need to preempt grievance. In today's sharp sparkle, the winter air, anything can be made, any sentence begun. On the brink, on the brim, on the cusp. Praise song for walking forward into that light. Yes, it was a very tough moment in our nation's history. We were in the midst of endless wars overseas, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, and a delayed reckoning with many tragic elements of our great nation's history. But here's the thing. There was hope for a brighter future embodied in our election of our first African-American president. And there should be now as well. It's embodied in my running mate, Kamala Harris, who now becomes our first female vice president, as well as our first African and Asian American vice president. But however that hope is embodied in individuals, it is grounded in who we are collectively as Americans. We are a people who repeatedly fall short of the vision which we are called to be the best of us, called to by the best of us. But we have yet to give up. We walk forward toward the light of a more just, more diverse, more loving world. Now, I know I get a lot of grief from my supporters when my response to injustice, greed, and seemingly willful ignorance is to say, that's not who we are, we're better than that. People tell me that honesty requires saying that who we are is a people who have a long track record of papering over violence, exploitation, and greed with glorious myths. We have a long history of glorifying those myths at the expense of confronting painful or inconvenient truths. People tell me who we are is more clearly seen in the tragic or reprehensible elements of our history than what is visionary and saintly. They tell me we are best seen as the collective results of our current behavior, not our proclaimed visions of ourselves as fair-minded, compassionate defenders of equal opportunity and democratic principles. But I'm asking you to listen to "That's not who we are, we're better than that," the way those of you who voted for me know we need to listen to the phrase Black Lives Matter. I'm asking you to listen with love in your hearts and an intent to create equal opportunity for all of us. People who are fearful or angry hear Black Lives Matter as a call for Black supremacy. They respond, no, all lives matter. But of course, if you listen with love, you know that Black Lives Matter simply demands that police, other institutions of government, and all of us individually actually act as if all lives truly matter, including Black ones. The test of whether we are overcoming racism in policing should be whether stops, arrests, shootings, and death statistics show police treating Black and white folks with equal respect and presumptions of good intentions. And when we look at those results, good intentions can't be given more weight than the actual outcomes and the reports of Black people about what they actually experience. If you listen with love to me saying, that's not who we are better than that, you know I am saying, all those terrible things you want me to name are true. They need to be addressed, but they won't be addressed if we lose sight of the most important truth, the truth that we can and should respond to our better angels. We can and should put this nation back on course toward a brighter future, embracing human diversity and respect for Mother Earth. We are a people who, for all our failings and challenges, can do that. The great progress we have fitfully made sustains my faith. The supportive words so many of you shared with me and Jill during the campaign reinforced it. And how can I believe otherwise when I know my life is in the hands of a loving God who is steering us in that direction? But I know that many of you don't believe in that God or any God. I spent a lot of time thinking about why I can come before you confident that you too embody the power of the life-saving love that is, as Elizabeth Alexander said, the mightiest word. We have a huge problem stalking the land at the moment. A disregard for the necessity of relying on science and reason to seek truth. One of the most precious gifts our founders left us was a respect for the free and responsible search for truth, coupled with an intent to promote justice, equity, and compassion, to accept differences among us as a source of growth, and protections for the right of conscience and democratic processes for decision-making. This devotion to science and reason has continually spurred our nation toward the reforms that have begun to correct the oppressions embedded in our original Constitution, including slavery and the denial of civil rights to women. None of this wider vision of justice is necessarily grounded in faith in any particular God. All of it is grounded in the need for love to exercise power. Without that, as Dr. King warned us, love is just sentimentality. Government serves us best when it is aligned with a free and responsible search for truth. Indeed, when it affirms and promotes that search. A government that forbids research on gun violence is failing you. A government that stifles the teaching of history, which includes the voices of the conquered and oppressed, is failing you. A government that stands by while lies are propagated about the legality of elections found over and over in court cases to have been free and fair is failing you. A government that does not act on the recognition that we and all nations are part of an interdependent web of existence is failing you. A government that ignores the capacity of unregulated social media to divert us from a responsible search for truth into dark landscapes of irrational fear, hatred, and division is failing you. I believe we are a people worthy of a government that does not routinely fail us. And so I pledge to devote my presidency, with your help and God's, to moving toward that goal. Ours will be a hard journey, but it will not be a journey of despair. My administration will not be afraid to apologize, learn from its mistakes, and try again. We are a people with a spark of the divine in each and every one of us. Let us fan that flame until our way forward is illuminated as never before. God bless you, and God bless the United States. So there's my effort to channel our President-elect Joe Biden. And I look forward to hearing your responses to that. What has been left out? What would you like to question? And Jordan is going to handle that for us.
So Barnaby has invited us to share reactions. I believe you all are now able to unmute yourselves, although I will ask you not to do that. If you would raise your hand, if you have something to say, there are a couple of ways to do that. The Zoom veterans will know that at the bottom of their participant list is a ... and that will allow you to raise your hand. People using the newer Zoom will notice at the bottom of your computer screen a thing called reactions, where you may have a raise hand or a couple of hand icons, which if they appear on your screen, I will be happy to recognize you. And if none of that works, just wave at the camera if your camera is on, and we'll invite you to share. So there's 3 ways of getting attention. And if you have addenda or comments to Barnaby's inauguration speech, please share. Let's see, Liam. I think I've asked you to unmute.
Thank you, Barnaby. That was very thoughtful and thorough and insightful. The one thing that I hear Joe Biden doing often is acknowledging the human cost of this coronavirus and reaching out with his heart to all those who are grieving and hurting. And I think a government that does not empathize with the human loss that we are all feeling together is failing us. And I think his heart, he would call that a heart failure. Just a thought.
There's Jerry, Poppy and Jerry. So why don't you unmute and feel free to share.
I also really appreciated your words, Barnaby, and was particularly moved by one part in particular, which was also highlighted in the poem that Esther read. And it's something that I find really challenging and really difficult, and I believe it's really important to do. And that's to really accept the people who are doing and saying things that I think are so destructive and wrong as having a heart and having a soul that I could connect with and probably should. It makes me think about the numbers of times when I was a parent and needed to say, I'm not upset with you being wrong. I'm upset with what you're doing. And it's really hard sometimes to make that separation. I know for one thing, it can feel weak. For another, it can feel naive to look at the destruction we saw happening with intent and with a desire to hurt people and create violence. It can be very hard at that time to feel any love for those that are doing it. But I truly believe that the only way out of this mess of division that we're in is to work from the base of love and acceptance of people and not what they're doing. And I think that that includes at some point the things that other people are doing require violence, require force, require a desire to be able to stop that person, keep them from doing what they want to do or are already doing that will result in harm to other people. And to not have that ability, to not have that kind of force and be willing to accept it will result in just what we saw happen in the Capitol. And yet, Barnaby, as you pointed out, that can be done and still have the feeling not of hatred toward that person or those people, but the need to stop them in order for them, and it's both for us and for them, that they need to be stopped. Anyway, that's enough for me. Thank you.
Well, keeping in mind Thoreau's observation that you haven't convinced someone just because you've silenced them, I'm going to leave any opportunities for further reaction until later. And thank you both for Liam and Jerry for those contributions. I think they're both spot on to what I was feeling when I was trying to edit, which is the hardest possible thing, especially when you know you're really the president and you can talk as long as you want and no one's going to stop you. But that's the part where I wasn't Biden, I was the minister, and I did limit myself. So by way of benediction, I'm just going to say that I hope as we go forward into this week and we see how it unfolds, that we nurture and hang on to all of those resources that we have in us as individuals and in us as a Unitarian Universalist society to come out of that week with as much hope for the future as we went into it. I know we have those kinds of resources within us, and I ask us to work on nurturing them. And invite you to join me in a postlude, a song that I always find one of those sources of inspiration. Blessed be and amen.
Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Keep on moving forward. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on moving proudly. Keep on moving proudly. Keep on moving proudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly. Keep on singing loudly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Keep on loving boldly. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna reach across our borders. Reach across our borders. Reach across our borders. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna end the occupations. End the occupations. End the occupations. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna stop this war together. Stop this war together. Stop this war together. Never turning back. Never turning back. Gonna keep on moving forward. Keep on moving